Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Breaking Uneven podcast. We love to talk shop, uncover the beauty of failures, and play a few games. Today, we have with us the co founder and CTO of Haptik, Swapan Rajdev. He studied computer engineering at the University of Illinois. After graduating, he worked as a consultant at Accenture and a software engineer at Radius Intelligence. He then started his entrepreneurial journey by starting Zing apps, and now Haptik. Have we missed anything noteworthy from your journey so far?
No, you're fully on track. The only one thing I'd like to add is my Zing Apps journey was actually in parallel with some of my other things. So, I was doing Zing Apps on the side while still working full time at that point. And then obviously, when the idea of Haptic came about, I went full time on Haptic. But yes, you're mainly right about all my different stints.
Awesome. So let's come to Haptik, right? To kick us off, we're gonna start with a little bit of a game.
So yeah, we're gonna
Oh,
play.
exciting.
We're gonna play the Twitter pitch challenge. Twitter is known for its 280 character limit on every tweet, which sometimes makes it a little difficult to convey your thoughts. It takes about 20 seconds to speak 280 characters. So we transfer this challenge to you to explain to us haptic in 20 seconds. But we won't make it easy. We also want you to use one emoji and one hashtag in your tweet. Any questions?
No, sounds fun. My mind's churning on my 280 characters, even though Twitter has now changed the whole thing and you can put massive posts, but I'll try to stick to that. The emoji will be a robot emoji. I think,
Okay, wait. Let me start the timer.
oh, it's a 20-second
20
timer,
seconds.
huh?
Yes. So
Okay.
three, two, one, go.
All right. Haptik is a, conversational AI SaaS platform. There's a lot of buzzwords in this, but to tell you, basically, we help a lot of our customers, which are mid to large enterprises, really provide really good or exceptional user experiences to their users and on the medium of choice, which is conversations, right? So everyone is very comfortable with chatting today. So we have been able to provide very good experiences through conversationals using AI. AI is at the center of everything we do, but it's not just the experience that we build, right? We give a lot of people, our customers, analytics on continuously how to keep improving these experiences. And, at the end of the day, really solve the user's problems, right? Which is where we look at it. One last sentence I would put in there is we're not a contact support automation, which is what I think very often chatbots are referred to. We actually help our customers really improve what I would like to call the experience, which will impact top line rather than bottom line, right? So that's kind of the way I would put it. The emoji, as I said, would be a bot, but I would put another emoji because my firm belief is it's humans plus AI greater than humans greater than AI, right? So I think that's the kind of way I look at it. So it'd be a bot and a human along with it. And the hashtag is, I would call best experience ever, right? That's kind of the way I would put it.
Amazing. I think you went more for the new Twitter because it was longer than 20 seconds. But
Yeah, I have to break the rules and push the boundaries because without that, we wouldn't be where we are.
amazing. Um, but yeah, now let's get deeper into what haptic is and your journey so far.
See, one of the points of similarity between us is I started my career as a corporate consultant, and so did you. And I know for me, it was a, I now think of it as a very important first step. But what is your experience? What is your, let's say, takeaways from starting in that manner?
Yeah. I agree with you, right? I think at the time of switching and moving from corporate to startups, I was in a very different point of view that, hey, this, but there was a point in time. I think when I look back at it, it really set up my fundamentals really well, right? I think there were a couple of things that, when I look back at it, it really taught me one, how an organization works, right? And I think while at a startup, when you start off, you don't think about a lot of those things. how do you scale a company? It's a very, very hard challenge, right? And while obviously I was one small, piece of the big puzzle, I actually saw a lot of those things, right? Which is how do you get a bunch of people motivated? How do you get them together in a room to really solve problems? And, the biggest thing is how alignment really is a challenge, right? So even though I was in the, you know, very early in my career, a lot of things that I had to do was work with multiple different, teams. As a consultant, you have to work with the customer, you have to work with internal teams. How do you kind of go about not just, hey, delivering your work, but also kind of technically selling it? I think, a very important aspect of this is, what you're doing, can you get other people to buy in and get excited about a lot of that, right? So I think from alignment to obviously, how do you position your work, a lot of that and how do you scale an organization came through all of that, right? The other thing was, at least during my stint at Accenture, right? And I would give a lot of the benefit to the people I worked with, and those kind of things was, the ownership that I got, right? So even though I was fairly young in my career, the kind of ownership I got, the kind of responsibilities I got really taught me a lot, right? That no matter the work I'm doing, the impact of that can be fairly massive if I go and look around it and, really care about what I'm doing, right? So I think I got a lot of ownership. One trait that, I don't know if where it came from, but my trait was, never say no to anything initially. So I actually did a lot of different things, which probably also led me to, moving on at a certain point. But, you know, I got the opportunities because it's not about just being at the right place at the right time, right? It's about being at the right place is in your control, right? So what all do you say yes to? What all do you say no to? At least in early stages of your career, I took on a lot. I did a lot. I did all sort of things which were probably not my responsibilities, but that kind of put me at the right place when the time was right, right? So I think I learned a lot of those things through that, through my, initial few years in a larger corporate for that matter.
So, what are, I mean, because it was such a good experience for you, what are some of the kind of work culture traits that you built into Haptic to allow for your people to have the same kind of experience?
Yeah, I would take some of it from corporate, but I would also take some of it from the startup I joined after that. So, after Accenture, I joined a startup called Radius Intelligence, right? Um, and one of the reasons I actually joined it, in fact, was very, very big reason, in fact, was the people working there, right? So, in fact, Radius Intelligence, when I joined it, it was called Fwix. The name also did not make any sense. They barely had a product at the time as well, right? I mean, they had a technology, but they didn't have a product. They were very early in their revenue. But the reason I joined it was because I think the people I got to interact with were very, very high caliber people, right? So for me, I was like, if there's such a good group of people together, I just get to learn a lot from them. And there's no doubt something will happen here when you have such great people, right? I really took that one to Haptik, right? I think to me the biggest thing about Haptik even today is the kind of people who join Haptik, right? And over a period of time, Akrit, my co-founder, and I, we've discussed this quite a bit. For us, when we hire, we actually look at aptitude, attitude, and then skills, right? For us, it's like, skills can be learned, right? Like anyone can come and learn a skill, but you need the aptitude and attitude to learn a skill and be willing to be kind of going above and beyond on those fronts, right? So, that was a very interesting part of Radius that I kind of got to Haptik. Even today, we recruit selectively. We actually, a lot of people who got recruited at Haptik, we didn't really have an open JD or, position, right? You meet people through your network. You're like, hey, these are great people. I just want to work with them, right? So I think a lot of that is the culture of Haptik. The other thing, right, which is I actually made switches in my careers, and what I realized is I got a lot of opportunities to learn, and people took chances on me when they had no reason to do that, right? So I'll give everyone an example. As I said, I started Zing Apps, when I was still at Accenture, for that matter, and I did that, which was a mobile gaming, side gig, which again Akrit and I used to do on the side, right? Because we just wanted to do more things in mobile. Um, After that, when I came to Radius, I was a mobile person, but I got the opportunity to work a lot on back end, front end technologies, which I had not done in a professional world, right? And at that point, the leader out there, the technology leader, gave me that opportunity, and he's like, hey, you know what? You can go do this, right? Um, and I think that shaped me as a very solid engineer, which allowed me to start Haptic, right? Like I knew the whole stack. I had the confidence that no matter the problem, I'll be able to solve it as an engineer. And I've taken that back to Haptic as well, right? And not just in engineering overall, right? Which again goes back to those three things that I said, right? Essentially, a lot of things can be learned. You just have to identify when's the right time and who's the right person. It doesn't matter if they have those skills today, right? Like, we started Haptic, there were 100 things Akrit and I had no clue about, right? Like, we've never run a SaaS company in our life. We started off with a direct to consumer mobile app, right? We learned all of that on the go, right? And we've placed bets on people which are very similar in nature. And the people who are succeeding in a Haptic today are people who went through that journey, right? We've there is a saying that, hey, you need to get experienced people and know all those things, and yes, those are right, those are not wrong. But what I've realized is, as long as the hunger to learn more is there, no matter the experience, um, you're gonna excel, right? And I think that's the culture we've built at Haptic, right? Like we've always pushed people beyond their boundaries, right? There are people who are not comfortable taking on new things because they just don't know that they're capable of that, right? So I think we've pushed a lot of boundaries in people, and it's been mainly about people for that matter.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I think there are a lot of people that can attest to that as well. Like we had Aditi on our podcast, and she was saying that when she left Haptic to start Canonic with like few of her other colleagues, she really praised the culture that y'all set in place. And she mentioned that if people ever left Haptic, it was either to start something of their own or they had like a very personal reason to leave. And no one just left for like a competitor or something like that. Like it, and that's very rare in these days, especially in our like generation. People are known to keep like moving and move to competitors and things like that. So I think like that's incredible in terms of like how y'all have set that up. But looking at Haptic and when y'all started it, like companies and startups are known to like pivot in like their early days. What was the initial idea of Haptic, and is that what Haptic is now, or what has been the transition?
Yeah. Oh no, we went through a lot of pivots and avatars, right? But see, I'll tell you, the reason we started, right, which was the core belief, and this was in 2011, right, which we realized that the new age communication channels, right, which is how we as people communicate with anyone else, was changing from, let's say, phone calls, or just any other mediums, to a lot more of this chatting, right? And I think the reason for that is, back then there was BlackBerry Messenger, which was very popular. I knew so many people who bought a BlackBerry just because they wanted a BlackBerry Messenger, right? Then WhatsApp came about to kind of change the whole game, where you don't need to be tied to a phone. You can have an app and you can start talking to other people. And WhatsApp was on an uptrend at that point, right? I think a couple of these data points made us realize that, what, how can we do something in conversations, right? How can we bake the digital conversation? So we're not talking about in person, right? They have their own value, but we're talking about digital conversations. How do we make that a lot better? What can we do there or build some utility on top of it, right? So I think that was always at the heart of everything we've done. So if you look at, we're going to be 10 years old now in August, right? So throughout the whole 10 years, that belief has always remained and always stayed strong, right? The applications and the way we went about doing it changed drastically over the years, right? And I think that's kind of what happened. So, when we first started off, we started off as a personal assistant on mobile, right? So basically, anyone could come on our mobile app. You could kind of send in a message. It was around booking a flight, ordering food, booking a cab, getting to know your cricket scores and whatnot, right? Like, tell me a joke, in fact, our most popular use case was remind me to drink water, right? So we would remind someone to drink water every 2 hours, right? Like those were the use cases, and that was the mobile app we had, right? And that's kind of where Haptic's brand initially was all B2C, a personal concierge on a mobile app through conversations, right? So that's kind of where we started off. um we were in that wave because at that point, we were still explaining to a lot of people who would come to us, and even businesses for that matter, what chatbots were, right? At that point, the word chatbot did not even exist. We used to say that, hey, we're using AI to do a lot of these things. So initially it was a lot of kind of businesses didn't buy into it, right? But then around 2017, 2018, right, there was a big shift because this whole area of obviously chatbots and everything started shifting. And we started seeing an organic opportunity of, companies coming to us and saying that, hey, I've seen your personal assistant. Can you build a bot for me, right? Which I can build for my users, right? So it started off where we took everything that we were doing, right? So it's not like, hey, we changed a lot of our stack or anything, right? We just changed what market we were going after. So instead of going directly to users, we started going via businesses. It started as a very, very small segment of our business, right? But that's where the money was. Honestly, you don't, in the B2C segment, it's very, very hard to make money, but in the B2B area, we started getting revenues, we started making money, and we were just doing the same thing but in a different manner. And then, come 2018, we said that, hey, this is the business trying to go faster. So that was kind of the main thing. And then, that's when we kind of became a full-fledged SaaS platform. So today where we are is, we have a full conversational AI platform, from building a bot to analytics on a bot to getting humans and bots together to really provide the experience for mid to large enterprises, right? And that's kind of where we are at this point.
You mentioned that the initial thing was like the personal assistant where you can ask like what the score is and things like that. So you've gone from something like that to now even working with Mumbai Indians. So that's like an incredible journey to start from
Yeah.
that to this.
It's come a full circle. A lot of things that we used to do on our own, we're now going through the partners we were trying to get at that point, right? So as you said, cricket scores, booking a cab, all of these things, right? Now we're working with some of the largest companies in India and globally and helping them provide those experiences, right? So as I said, our core belief has never changed. It's always been what it is. But yeah, right. It's coming a full circle today, for that matter.
Yeah, it's incredible. And like you mentioned, like the biggest and the best companies are what Haptik is working with. So like Coca-Cola, HDFC, Samsung, Edelweiss, Amazon Pay, and like so many more. What would you say is one difficult thing that comes with working with these like big companies?
You know, there I would say what the difficult thing is more a mindset shift. It's a very different way of running a business, right? So when you're running a direct to consumer business, you know you can kind of come up with an idea, you can launch that idea, take it live, get your feedback all on your own, wills and fancies, right? I mean, sure, you do all those things, but it's a lot more, your what I could say in your control, right? When you move to the B2B segment, right, the sales cycles are longer, right? So you have to sell. So I think first is this whole selling motion, right? Which is how do you get, enterprises to believe, buy, and do all of that thing, right? Which is there's a whole plethora of things here, right? So it's not just, hey, once they've bought it, it's good, right? There's a whole layer of infosec. There's a whole layer of legal aspects of it. They exist in B2C, right? I'm not saying no, but there it's a lot more. You're like, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and then you get feedback loop. Here, the feedback loop is also longer, right? Because the sales motion is drastically different. So I think if you ask me, it's your mindset shift to how do you sell to businesses, and even in businesses, right? It's different on the kind of business you go after. A small business, an SMB, is a lot faster to kind of take to market versus a larger enterprise is a lot longer. So there's a lot of bifurcation on which is the target audience you want to go after, who's the business, how are you setting your company up to make them successful, and then following a lot of their processes rather than trying to just make your own processes, right? So I think a lot of that is there. The good thing from that aspect, which also is a challenge on an engineering front, is the scale, right? Like sometimes even one, two customers, you just get so much attention, right? Which is, hey, we go live with Dream 11 and now we can see all the traffic of Dream 11 coming, right? Hotstar coming. It possesses a great challenge on scale, but that's what we live for, right? I mean, that's an exciting challenge because when you get these customers, you're able to have that impact.
So then, because you're a tech company, you've got a tech team and a sales team, and of course, sometimes the coordination might become a little difficult. But considering, you're the CTO, have you? What have been some of the clashes that have ended up coming about from a tech versus biz dev perspective?
Oh yeah. There's a lot of them, for that matter, and they're healthy clashes. I mean, if I were to put my two hats on, which is CTO and then founder, as a founder, these are very important clashes, right? So I'll tell you the biggest one that comes in, right? There's two things. One is, what are you selling a roadmap, right? Which is what I mean by that is, when you're selling, customers are like, oh, this is great, but can I get this, right? And there's a valid point that, hey, the request is not a bad request, right? But can you go sell it? Because if it's sold, as a company, you have to live up to your word and then deliver it, right? So I'm not talking about only engineering, but I'm talking about product and engineering, right? Because I think they go hand in hand, right? So, there's a lot of time, and it's very easy to sell a roadmap that, oh, this is a great feature, fine, we'll deliver this for you. But the challenge that ends up happening is, if you just keep selling individual features, right, you can't get the economies of scale. Because what you want, ideally, in a SaaS platform is, when you're selling a particular feature, it should be applicable to at least 30 to 50% of your customers, right? So you got to build it in a way and deliver it in a way that at least most of your customers will benefit from them. Otherwise, you're just doing services work, right? That, hey, I've built something for customer A, now I'm going to build something for customer B, which is very different. Customer C, very, very different, right? So the product and the engineering thinking is, how do you abstract all of this out, right? You have to understand the problem statement, not the solution, because most people give you solutions, but you got to peel the layer and get to the problem, and then come back and find your solution to it that can be applicable, and is this problem big enough to solve, and those kind of things, right? So I think there's a very healthy rift there, because sometimes people sell it, but the important thing is, without that feedback, product engineering cannot even deliver anything, right? Again, you'll be delivering features that we think are right, but the customers don't even care about it. So I think there's a very healthy tension there. And number one, number two, the other tension that is there is the speed of delivery, right? Everything needs to go out yesterday, for that matter. And over a period of time, you know, as you build more and more, right? And at least, Haptik being a 10-year-old company, there is legacy stuff you have to maintain as well, right? So it's not just, say, I've built it and I can forget about it. So, you've built things over 10 years. So you've got to maintain those things to work and scale and do a lot of those things. But you have to keep delivering new things at a speed which is faster than probably everyone else in the industry. So, it's there's always debates on, why is it going to take so long? What does this mean? How can we ship more? How can we not ship more? And all of those things, right? So that's a classic challenge and tension that I'm assuming most businesses and in product engineering have. But yeah, I mean, those are very, very well pronounced for that matter.
Yeah, no, see, there is the fact that, I mean, going back to your first point, nothing new comes out of a world that is at peace. Right? If everyone is all well and good and all happy, then the clashes are needed to incite a new idea. And but okay, so coming to the talent, right, which is basically what's driving that speed of delivery, being ahead of the curve compared to other companies. How do you source your talent, right? Like, what do you look for in people, right? There's one side which is what you do to help and boost the people in terms of company culture, but what do you actually look for? What is actually okay? Let me make it very simple. What is one trait that you would want to see absolutely 100% in someone that you would hire?
If it's a one trait is a hard one, but I think it's
I
a
know.
great question, right? We think about this a lot, but I'll tell you, so there are three traits, but I'll start with the top one, which I think to me is the major one, right? And a lot gets come through by this, right? But I actually, and see, I'll talk engineering and non-engineering because I have different ways of evaluating this, right? But one of the very important things that I like to look for is just very basic logical and first principles thinking, right? Because it's very easy to go and talk about, hey, this is the work I did, this is what we did, this is what we did, right? But to me, as I said, right, half the problem is to really peel the layer to understand the problem, as I said, because that's one of our biggest challenges, right? So, there is logical and first principles thinking, which, it's hard to evaluate in an interview, honestly. But that's to me number one, right? I mean, as I said, to me, aptitude, attitude, and skills, right? Aptitude is exactly that, right? Which is, given a problem statement, it doesn't need to be a hardcore technical problem statement, right? Given a problem statement, can you use logic and thinking to solve that problem, right? That's kind of the base requirement. So we actually, in every single interview process of ours, we give an assignment, right? And we do it as a take home assignment, right? So you get 2 to 3 days or whatever X number of hours to take it. Now, in the world of the internet, it's very easy to know that, someone can go Google this assignment and get an answer, right? But exactly, these assignments are built ground up in the way that even if you Google it, there is no right or wrong answer, right? Like you can go anyhow. The question really is, what is the process to your solution, right? So I think that becomes a very big trait of ours. Certain areas that kind of tell you a lot more about this. So as I said, one is we give an assignment, we give case studies for non-engineering people. For engineering people, we give a certain few other kind of you know take home kind of assignments. you know we've seen this a trait, and that's what I think Janvi was also saying, right? Usually people who have been founders, number one, I think, end up having to learn that attribute through their journey very well, right? Because, and I'm not even talking about successful founders, right? In fact, I think the other way, which is people who founded a company and not worked out, learn this a whole lot more, right? Because successful founders sometimes have the attribute of being at the right place at the right time, right? But the people who did not work went through a lot of rigor for that matter, right? Um, so actually, being a founder is becomes a very big plus for us. And the third thing, um, which we usually look at from scanning perspective, right, is um, actually your extracurriculars and things and interests outside of just your work, right? Because what ends up happening, so in fact, a trait we saw, right, people who are actually who play competitive sports actually end up doing a lot of this. This doesn't come in the first principles thinking. This actually comes in the culture of how you can approach a problem, right? There is always going to be competitiveness, either internally or externally, right? But when you're used to playing in a sport, especially a team sport for that matter, you realize you have to see, hey, what are my strengths? What are other people's strengths? How do we come together to really, win for that matter, right? So these are some of them, right? I would say, this is how we attribute to aptitude. Attitude is the sports thing. And then skills, obviously, we interview for, because if you've had experience, you should have those skills. But the first two are absolutely critical for us.
A lot of what you said was that the process in between, like the thought process that comes while solving a problem is important. A lot of times the journey to getting somewhere is more important than like the destination itself. And a lot of like startups also, like the process of starting it and working towards something is better than like the end goal essentially. But coming to Haptik in the more recent years, in 2019, Reliance Group acquired a majority stake, and it was $100 million deal, which is insane. What was the process of this deal, and what would you say founders should keep in mind when they're planning to sell a part or their entire business?
Yeah. So the process was, or the journey to, I think, getting to Reliance Jio was very interesting. Actually, it was very swift, but not swift at the same time. So essentially, you know, we've actually, we were actually kind of always just thinking about what can take us to the next level, right? I think that's always been a part of this because, especially in 2019, while conversational AI was picking up, we knew this is a long-term game, right? Like this is not like, hey, short term, we're just going to be able to kind of, break the market and all of those things, right? Which is we knew it's going to take a steady increase to really become the big legendary company we want to, right? And at that point, one of the things we realized was, Reliance had a similar kind of thought because, we kind of knew that, hey, this is something they were dwelling with at that point, right? So we actually got a meeting with Reliance. We got it with very 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 senior leaders at Reliance, right? And the meetings was great, right? I think they realized the vision we wanted to. I think they had a very similar vision. So the vision of where we see the world and what conversations can do to it were very aligned, right? I think that was a great start for that matter, right? And I think as you asked, right, a lot of times acquisitions happen because while people obviously the first few meetings talk about this, right, but um, it never ends up becoming that way, right? Like a lot of times the visions of the acquiring company or something changes and they're like, hey, no, this doesn't work for us, it doesn't happen, and a lot of shutdowns happen for that, right? I think that was one big thing that really came together, right? Secondly, it was very clear for us, right, that Akrit and me, that, while we're open to kind of giving majority of our company and whatever, right, we are entrepreneurs at heart, right? Like we want to be able to run and build as entrepreneurs and not as just a team inside something else, right? And I think that was one thing we were very clear about, and we had conversations on that. And I'm not saying there's one right or wrong, right? Depending on the founder, what they
Yeah.
wants to do and everything, any of them can be right. But for us, that's what we knew, right? We wanted to be running this business as an entrepreneur. We wanted to get certain level of autonomy, but get the foundation to really scale. And I think that's where we spent some time aligning, and they were actually, Reliance was very much on the similar boat, right? They're like, we don't want you to be just another team in, Reliance. They actually said, we want you to build a global first company, right? And you and the founders are going to have full autonomy to run it. Like any investor, there's going to be regular cadences, regular, board meetings and everything, which obviously is important for everyone in the ecosystem. But we were given that autonomy to really run this company like our own and really build it that way, right? And I think these two things aligned, which is what the most important part was, right? And I think for us, that's what mattered the most. Um, the process, obviously, the legal work took a while. So, while when we announced it from when we started, but the good thing was, the mode of operation started the minute we started the conversation. And Reliance being Reliance, we all know it. Their mode of operation is very, very efficient, swift, and fast, right? I think that's what matters the most. So one of the fears we had, which is, got taken out very fast, was, will we be stuck in a large organization process? Will we be able to move fast? Will we be able to do a lot of those things? But none of those things kind of happened, right? In fact, I have not seen someone as nimble as Reliance at such a large ecosystem, right? There are times we want to get things done, and we've turned around things in hours, given the way they operate, right? So overall, what's important is why you're getting acquired becomes very important, right? I mean, there are times where you're like, hey, I think my technology is good, the company can use my technology, right? There are times when a founder is like, hey, I'm burnt out, I don't want to do this anymore, I just want to get it a home and then move on from that. And there are times you do it because you just want a larger platform and the mode of operation needs to be determined. So I think we were clear on that. We were afraid that, it would go on the other way, but Reliance was very well aligned to it. So today, even till today, right, the way we look at it, Reliance plays three big parts roles for Haptik, right? Essentially, one, they are the investor, right? They operate as an investor, like any other investor we would have in the company, right? We have our board meetings, we discuss where we're going to go, what does it mean, and all those kind of investor things, right? Number two, they are actually our largest customer. So the way we've set it up is, hey, Reliance, all the work you want to do across your ecosystem on conversations, Haptik is going to be the person doing it, and that's how we aligned it. So today they are our largest customers, and a large customer brings a lot of value for that matter, right? Like we learn so much from them. We have done implementations for them where no one else in the market has done it, and then 6 months later, everyone started wanting it, right? So we've been able to do a great job as them as the largest customer. And third, they are a strategic partner, right? Essentially now, anytime we want to experiment with a new product, right? Anything we want doors to be open, right? They are able to kind of do that, right? We work with all the best, right? Facebook, Microsoft, because they are investors now through the partnership of theirs, we kind of get a lot of the partnership benefits. So, we don't really feel like we are acquired. We actually think we have a very good foundation across these three areas, and that's how it happened, right? So the lessons were, exactly, I think it's important how you set up your mode of operations, right? As I said, because it's the journey that counts and not the end goal. If you're not able to set your journey up for what everyone is aligned on, it's going to be a painful journey, right? It'll die a slow death. Versus if you get some of these things right, you can really kind of, really leverage it very beautifully and kind of grow. So that's kind of where, our journey was.
Yeah, no, it's incredible in terms of how you position that. Like, it's not necessarily an acquisition, but more of a strategic partner. And I work in M&A as well, and more on like the people side of things. And we see a lot of companies that, like as you said, fall apart because either their thought process are not the same, or it's not aligned, the cultures don't match. How did you like announce this to your team, and like what was the feeling around that? Like, were they scared that it would be more of an acquisition, or were they well aware of like, okay, it's going through a strategic? Because I think that a lot of small companies, especially when it comes on the tech side, are scared to be acquired by big multinationals. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's like the general ethos behind it.
So, yeah, you're right. I've seen, so, there is definitely uncertainty when you talk about things like this, right? Because I think so what we do, right? And actually one part of our culture is we actually do a monthly town hall, right? With everyone in the company. And, one of the things, most of the people at Haptik know is we are very transparent internally where we actually kind of make sure that everyone knows what's happened and what's not happened, right? Um, I think there was a build up to this anyways, which wasn't planned. But let's say the months and a few, bunch of months before the acquisition, we used to talk about, hey, what's the next step for us, right? How are we going to get that big leap? So all of those things. So I think a lot of people knew that we need to do something big to make it big, right? It's just that if we do the same things again and again, we'll get there, but probably take us forever, and maybe we might run out of funding or something like that, which will be worse, right? So I think there was a build up to it, which actually kind of helped a lot.
Yeah.
When we announced it, I think everyone was excited, right? And I think that's what the big thing was, which is what Akrit and I did a lot of legwork for that matter, was making sure we set it up the right way, which is operationally we are independent, right? So I think when we said that, everyone was like, okay, that's great. Obviously, everyone had that ounce of doubt internally that, hey, most people just say it, but in reality, it doesn't work out that way and all those things. But over the next few months, right, and that's what happened, no one really saw a massive change in their day to day, right? Because, as you said, it's more like an investment. Sure, we set up a team to make sure Geo as a customer is successful, but those are part and parcels, right? There was no massive change in anyone's day to day working. And in fact, they could see the kind of growth we were doing, right? Right after that, the kind of confidence we were getting to take some calls. So, initially there was, maybe some doubt, but we didn't lose anyone for that matter because they're like, oh, now you've been acquired. And even today, right? I mean, most of the people, they know Reliance is the parent company, but I think most of the people don't get affected by it, impacted by it at all, right? In fact, it has been a boon to a lot of people because some of the things that happened in COVID, having a backing like Reliance, obviously the stability of Reliance through this period has actually, been a boon. So in fact, after that, I've had a bunch of people join us because we were part of Reliance and the stability we got because of them. So, um, I think that went off very well for that matter. And even I think even today where we stand, we would have been a very different company if some of that wouldn't have played out the way it did.
No, I think there is a certain amount of even client facing credibility that you might get because now the Reliance brand is attached to you. And as you said, Reliance has got the efficiency and, it's Reliance. Everyone knows what Reliance is, and that can give you that aura of that, if Reliance backs this company, it's solid. Which now I think you've got your own aura going. But it's been a journey to get here, and no journey is full without bumps and bruises. And I think so. We play this game to get more into the big points in your journey, whether it's great or challenges. So I'll hand over to Janvi for two lies, one truth.
Yeah, so we play this game called Two Lies, One Truth. The idea is that you give us three statements from your entire journey so far. It can be a challenge or an accomplishment. One of them has to be true, and the other two are false statements. And then Anuj and I have to guess which one was the truth.
Wow. So one, we have ever never ever run out of money in our journey through Haptic. That means we've always been able to make payroll and always been able to make rent and all those things. Um, Number two, up until Reliance, we've had a very standard and stable journey of venture capitalists investing in us. And number three, uh, Akrit and I, in our personal journeys as founders, have led a very, very similar life.
I think the third one is true, so that's not the lie. Just because I think as they the initial startup also that they had before Haptik was together, and then they went to university together. So I think that is like a similar trajectory. But the other two
I'm gonna
are,
go with I. I don't know. I mean, to say that like you'll never run out of money, I don't know, because it's a startup. So okay, you know what? Just for the sake of difference, I'm saying the second one is true. The second one was that y'all have had a very standard journey up until Reliance, right? Venture capital.
So Janvi is right. The third one is true. Well, I think the journey of Akrit and I, while it's very interesting because it's not just college and startup, but even in our personal lives, we got married just coincidentally, almost at very similar times. We have two daughters, both which are 2 years apart. While they're both 2 years apart, but not the same age. So my elder one is as old as his younger one. But we've had two daughters. Both of us both got married at similar times. Both were
wow.
same college. We've led, very. And I think the reason I brought that up, I think as a startup, I think that's what's kept us very, very strong. I think we've both been able to relate to each other's challenges across all fronts very well, for that matter. I think a lot of startups, what I've seen, right, go down under because of differences in founders, and the differences are because it's not just work, right? There's a lot that goes on the personal front where one needs to balance the other out and all of those things. So I think that's been the true. Secondly, the second one is actually not true. Our first investor was a Kalari Capital, but after that, we've never had a VC in our cap table. So we actually had Times Internet, who took a big stake after Kalari. So they actually were the sole owners after Kalari and only Times Internet, and that's why after Times Internet, the next big one that came was Reliance. So actually, after our second year, we've never had a very traditional VC funding round. It's always been very strategic partnerships with larger companies giving us a base. And the first one is, oh, we actually ran out of money twice in our journey. We've literally, there were times where after our funding also, the funding ran dry, and Akrit and I had to payroll or bankroll it for a little bit from our personal savings all over again. So it felt like the starting of Haptik again. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of been that kind of journey, very different, interesting. I'm sure a lot of startups go through money problems, but the non-VC and founders going through similar journeys was the other part.
But so
That's
coming,
so
yeah, so
cool.
coming back to, sorry, I was just going to say, coming back to your third point, the fact that you all have had very similar journeys and you all are still very similar. What you're saying is having one of you on the podcast is as good as having both of you on the podcast.
So we're very different people, by the way. So him and I are
I'm sure.
extremely different. We are poles apart, for that matter, as individuals. I'm sure if you had him on the podcast, you'll probably get very different content, for that matter. But and I think that's important, right? I think that's also the reason. So his strengths are, that's why he's the CEO of the CTO. We both play to our strengths that way, but very different person individually. But our journeys have been very similar, for that matter.
I've heard him very recently at Tech Sparks. He was talking about the team initiative that y'all are starting. So that was, I mean, I get what you mean about the personalities being different.
Yeah.
Um, cool. All right. So let's play red flags. Now what we're going to do is we are going to give you three situations, and in each of those situations there will be two things that are going well and one red flag. So they're adapted for Haptic and you have to choose which situation you would rather be in.
Okay, let's do
Cool.
it.
All right. So situation one is the average queries for a client resolved without an agent is approximately 88%. Haptic is reaching 100 million transactions processed in the next 5 years. Your chatbot across your channels has a bug and won't work for a week. So that's situation one. Situation two is Haptic has saved 10 million man hours for their clients. Haptic has 1,000 plus languages available, but the culture at Haptic changes and employees feel like their well-being is not taken care of. Situation three, is Haptik has more than 2,000 leading brands in your client roster. Haptik's rating on G2 is 4.9 out of 5. But Akrit, your co-founder, has to leave the business.
Wow. You guys really chose hard ones, huh? Yeah, it's a hard one, but I think in true spirit of Haptic, you got to do what's right for the company, right? And I'm assuming Akrit is leaving because of the right reasons. He has some.
I already knew what you were going to pick. As soon as you said do what's right for the company, I already knew what you were going to pick.
Yeah, because I think, your chatbot's not working right, meaning your customers are getting impacted. And, if you're really doing 100 million transactions, well, 100 million in 5 years, I would say, I would say a lot more than that, but I get the gist. Your customers are going to suffer, right? I think in a week's worth of problems are there. Second one is your people are going to suffer, which is again not right by the company. The third one is Akrit leaving is probably he's like, done all the right things, he's leaving because of some reason which is there, but, you know, he's doing it the right way. And I know him, knowing him, he will do it the right way. He would never leave the company high and dry ever. So I'm assuming situation three is the best result for Haptic and hence, being the founder for me.
We've actually had it was I think co-founders on the podcast, and we presented them with that red flag as well, that one of the co-founders leaves the business, and what ended up happening was one founder chose another situation, the other founder chose that situation. But I think they claim the same thing, that okay, if the co-founder is leaving, they're leaving for the right situation, so
Yeah.
it's okay.
And see, I think
Just
what
interesting.
the way I think about it is most of the times there will come a point in time where one of the founders have to leave, right? Like I think it ends up happening at every given time, right? I mean, most startups when they get to a certain level, it ends up happening. We've seen it enough. Uh, if you would have put the next statement that Akrit co-founder had to leave because of, some really, really bad reasons and it was a bad one, all of those, I would have definitely not chosen that, right? Because I think no matter what, it would have not been right for anyone. But I think in this case, as I said, because it happens, because these things happen, as long as it's being done the right way, you got to do what's right for the people of the company, the customers of the company, and all of those things.
Yeah, fair. I think it's nice how you presented the fact that it was like the right thing for the company. So I think you were thinking more about Haptic, but not your own personal
Yeah.
um, situation in this case. But yeah, moving on to our final segment, which is the rapid fire. So it's self-explanatory. I'll give you a couple of questions and you need to give short and quick answers. So the first one is how many all-nighters did you pull in your first year of Haptic?
Oh, almost every night because I used to work in the US and Akrit and a bunch of other folks were in India. So I worked almost all nights for that matter. So it was, out of 365, I can easily say 300, 320 odd.
No way. That's like just 24 hours because you would work during the day in the US and then at night on Haptic, essentially.
No, it was a little different because during the day was calmer. Because I was the only one. So I started off Haptic while I was in San Francisco. Akrit and a bunch of other people who we had started off, who came in early, were all in India. So, you know, I used to easily work till 4, 5 a.m. every night. Then obviously grab a nap, wake up, do some work in the US and get that. And then probably, evenings take it a little easy again as well. So that was actually, one of the big things when Haptic started taking off of moving back was this is not a sustainable lifestyle versus it's not even right for the company, right? So, but the first year was very much, nights were the main time of working.
Fair enough. What is the scrappiest thing that you've done to build your business?
Scrappiest thing. So, oh, we've done a ton, but let's see. Initially, when we first launched, we didn't have all AI, so we were actually, I was one of some of the. So the way we did 24 hours was in India. Akrit and a few other people were doing because I was in the US. We took advantages. I would reply. we didn't say we were humans, but we didn't say we were bots either. So we kind of did a lot of support and helping people out ourselves. Classic fundraising stories. With some of the time when we were fundraising, we said, "Oh yeah, we have this," and then spent 2 nights just building a prototype of it because investors are like, "This is the future is." So we're like, "Okay, we have it. What are you talking about?" And then they're like, "Okay, let's do a demo in a few days," and then we would build that out. Um, but yeah, I think the initial one was so in the personal concierge time. One, we used to take chats a lot, and there were times when we were a mix of humans and bots. We would get so much traffic that even our human capacity was not enough. When all of us would be like, I have taken a lot of chats, through the initial years of Haptik. So I've been an AI for a very long
That's
time.
amazing. Did you ever question whether it was worth it?
Did I ever question was what worth it, like the scrappy thing, or is this a new question?
Whether haptic,
Oh
uh,
yes. Oh, lot of times. A lot of times. There's been lots of questions that is this worth it? Are we going anywhere? Is this effort actually impacting? Is it useful to anyone? Are we just building where no one cares about it? So there's obviously been a lot of that. We've been, a fun fact is within 6 months of starting Haptic, we almost shut it down because of some of that, right? And I think, in fact, that doubt has obviously gone through the years. It's not just that, but we were very, very close. So I remember we said that, hey, you know what, let's shut it down. Then we said, you know what, let's just give it 3, 4 more months. If it doesn't work out, then we'll shut it down. Luckily, those 3, 4 months, turn things around. There've been plenty of times through the journey of Haptic, we said that, dude, this is not going anywhere, right? Let's just shut it down, or whatever. Why are we doing it? Let's get someone else to run it. Maybe they're better than us. So there's been a lot of that through the journey.
so glad that you didn't shut it at that point. But one word to describe your emotion when you first raised money.
Overwhelming. It was both. It was one, you raise money, and obviously, in the startup world, there's this taboo that if you raise money, it's validation that, you've kind of done something right, and, all of those things. Obviously, money gives you leeway to keep continuing your journey and not shut it down. So I think there was a lot of excitement, but at the same time, the first round of funding makes it real, right? Like till then, you're like, it's my money, sure, this, that, exactly. When the going gets tough, you're like, dude, you don't feel like, hey, it feels like you're still doing a project just for the fun gigs of it, especially, while you're having fun doing it, it feels like, I'm giving this a shot. I think when the funding comes in, you're like, oh, I'm running a business and a serious one right now. There's outside funding of X amount come in, and there's a board and there's external people questioning me. So that kind of nervousness also comes in for that matter.
Yeah. Emotion when you first fired someone.
Oh God. Uh, I think I went. I was sad for 2 days. Uh, because firing is not easy. Like, you know, even though the person was not a good performer, right? Like this person's not a good performer. The problem is not the problem. The reason it's really hard, and why and especially me, right? It's not that the people are bad, right? You don't like most of the time that have taken almost 90% of the time, very few instances where it happened where you're like, dude, this person is doing wrong things for the company or their intention is wrong, right? I think it's always been that the intent is high, the person wants to do the right things. It's just they're not able to cope up or something else is not right, right? And that's why when you fire, you're doing it exactly. You do it for the right reasons, but you feel bad for the other person because at the end of the day, everyone's livelihood comes through certain amount of work you do, certain joy comes through that, and all those things. You feel like, oh my God, why am I doing this to this person? I was really sad for a while. I've had to do multiple of this, and I can tell you till today, it does not get easy. You still feel that you just have a lot more courage to do it, but it's not easy unless it's for the right, like the person's doing something wrong, right? Then you don't feel anything. But
Yeah.
when those things, it gets hard.
Yeah. Your biggest fear.
My biggest fear, my biggest fear is no, well, I think my biggest fear is for our, our our bots or our experiences don't help our users and we become redundant. So I'm not saying it because of technology. I don't worry that hey, there'll be a new tech or new something that will make us redundant. What I fear is we don't do the right things by the end user who are using our bots, and that's when we become redundant or we become irrelevant. Actually, redundant is not right. We become irrelevant.
Uh, would you ever retire?
Would I ever retire? You know, I would retire in the sense that I will stop working for a company or I'll stop working after a certain point, but me as a person, I always like to keep myself busy with projects, right? So I will always keep doing projects. I think I think about this a lot, which is at some point I'll be like, hey, you know what, I just want to do projects as a full-time job, right? And if those projects make money, which I'm hoping is good, but I think you need to get to a certain point to be able to make that call. But so I would retire from, if you could call like a job, but or maybe even entrepreneurship at some point in my life. But I will never stop doing projects and building things. I love building, so I will keep doing that.
Which hobby of yours did your work kill?
Which hobby of mine did my work kill? um, actually none. I'm trying to think about it. I think my hobbies died because of me and not because of work. In fact, I have realized this when I do my hobbies or some of my side projects, I actually am better at work, right? Because when you're 24/7 consumed by work, it gets exhausting, and at a certain point you plateau. So I think most of my hobbies have died because of me, but my not because of my work. In fact, I've done a bunch of things on the side, even when at Haptik, and it's I've realized that period of time whenever I'm doing more things, not more things, but a few things on the side, whether it's a hobby, whether it's building a side project, whether it's doing all of those, I'm a lot more effective and efficient at work. So I would never think, and work killing a hobby is my fault and not work's fault.
Fair. Books or podcasts?
Books or podcast? Books.
iPad or notebook?
iPad or notebook? Notebook.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Night owl, inspiring to be a morning person, but I don't know if I'll ever get there.
And your favorite social media platform?
Favorite social media platform? Um, I mean, the one I'm the most active on, in the sense the one I browse the most is Instagram. But I enjoy Reddit a lot, so I would do a lot of knowledge consumption through Reddit. Instagram is when I'm just want to shut off my brain and see what other people and random videos for that matter. But yeah,
Fair enough. So yeah, that concludes the rapid fire segment and bringing us to the end of our conversation. But one thing we do is that we ask our guest to ask our next guest a question. So first we'll ask you what our previous guest asked, and then you can ask our next guest a question. So he's asked,
Since your fitness founder asked a fitness question, I'll ask a food question. Okay, what are the top five things that can be paired with chocolate?
oh, almost anything. But let's start. Um, Wine. I think a good wine and chocolate go very well together. Um, Along with chocolate, coffee. I'm obviously talking about all beverages because this is what I do a lot. Coffee, wine, um, a nice, I think a nice spicy meal. While I won't call it as a pairing, but you know, after you have like a nice, well, I'm a non-vegetarian, so I'm thinking, like a nice roasted chicken with veggies, and after that you have a nice chocolate, right? So that's there. Ice cream obviously goes without failing. Ice cream's a good one. I've given four so far, and fifth one is mm, music. I mean,
Nice.
I think a nice chill song, enjoying your chocolate is a great situation.
No, that's amazing. I think I thought of it in such a different way, and like the responses that you gave are so different. So
What
it's
did you think of?
interesting to see. I was thinking more of like food, so like Nutella on toast, or like yeah, strawberries dipped in chocolate, like things like that. Not like music
Oh,
and
you
what,
were
like
thinking of,
not
yeah. I didn't
like
think of chocolate
physically.
being part of my meal. I look at chocolate being a
A
experience
meal
of
in
its own.
itself.
Yeah, oh, experience of its own. Right? Like I'm like, hey, there's chocolate now. Whether it's I never thought about the what chocolate. I'm just like, hey, chocolate and this.
No, for sure. And I think like yeah, wine and music are definitely like correct ones. Like we feel the same. And Anuj definitely was nodding when you said chicken, because like I'm vegetarian, but he is non-veg. But thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been incredible what you've achieved in your journey so far. And there's so much more to come. So thank you so much for being a part of Breaking Uneven.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a wonderful podcast. I can tell you, it's been it. Your questions were one of the hardest. It really made me think a lot, but it was very exciting. So thank you for that. Thank you for hosting a great podcast.
Thanks, Oman. Lovely speaking to you.